Please start the session, madam.
Is the presentation shared? Can everybody see it? Before I start, whoever is the moderator, can you please answer these basic questions, whether the presentation is available for all?
Yes, Ms. Sonika, we can hear you and we can see the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I start. My name is Sonika. I'm sitting in Zurich right now. It's pretty early in the morning, so good morning to all. And I'm still trying to come out of the last presentations that I heard, which were really enlightening and which were really like full of new versions and new epithets added to the already known and so popular and so imbibed in our culture and our beings. We're talking about Ramayana today and in this seminar, and what I'm going to show today is not a particular sequence or the set of episodes that we know in Ramayana. What I'm going to do today is show a bunch of paintings which have been taken mostly from the Riedberg Museum, I think a couple from the Somaiya collection itself, and few from other sources. And what we are trying to see in this or trying to achieve in this session is that we look at these paintings as close as we can and try to appreciate the artist's approach. Because we are talking about Ramayana, and in the last session, or I'm pretty sure like from yesterday's other talks also, that you all must have gathered that this is one story, one epic, which has so many versions. It's incredible. It is this one story which has so many storytellers and so many takers, so many listeners, and it has a roller coaster of emotions. It takes us to so many feelings, it takes us to so many moods and emotions, and it also gives us, this is one story which gives us talks about so many battles, some internal, some external. It also talks about so many fires, which was amazing because like when I was going through the paintings of Ramayana for this particular session, I was surprised to see that how many paintings talk of the fire and battles. Battles is one thing, but then the fire which is used in many forms. Some is internal, obviously, and some where we could see it as the physical manifestation. So talking of the fire, let's start with first painting. This is a beautiful painting where we see fire in the background. But let's focus on what is happening in the foreground, where we see this demon Kaband, who used to be a beautiful Gandharva in the court of Indra, and who by a curse was turned into this stump by Indra, and he lived in this forest, I think Crouch forest, for ages, waiting for Ram, especially Ram, to come and free him of this curse. And in this particular painting, we see Rama and let's take a closer look at it. On the extreme left, we see the two young princes. Now they are already in exile. And this painting is probably based on a regional version where Ram and Lakshman were still teenagers when they were in exile, because we see these really innocent faces, these adolescent figures. They're not grown-up men here. They look like teenagers. But when this particular episode happening, the Kaband episode, the Kaband literally tested their patience. They were already grief-stricken because they were looking for Sita, and they had to struggle with Kaband. So in their faces, we can see the tension coming up. We can see that they are really tense and exhausted. But in the end, I mean, they were smart people. They were smart boys. They figured out that the strength of Kaband lies in his arms. So that's why they decide to cut the arms. And while they were cutting the arms, Kaban asks them as to who they were because of all the strength that they could muster and kill him and slay him. So that's when they reveal that they are Ram and Lakshman. So the Kaban then asks them to also perform the funeral rites so that he could get the salvation, he could get away from this curse. And on the central painting here, in the central composition, we see this is a zoomed in section of the same funeral that is happening. And on the top of the fire, on the top of the suit that is coming out from the funeral, we see the divine form of the celestial form of this Gandharva turned in from Kabanda again to this beautiful Gandharva called Vishwavasu, and being gotten rid of the curse. But what is most beautiful for me in this painting is the fire, the way it is coming up, the way the suits are curling up and going high. And keeping this image in mind, let's look at another painting. This is a detail section of a painting where we see similar fire coming out. And it's a beautiful composition. If you can see the bright golden sun and the sun reflecting, the orange somewhere in the mountains in the background. And around the fire, unlike the last composition, here we see a lot of people around it. We also see some flags, we see some elephants and horses, which gives us the clues as to this is probably a more important funeral than Kabanda happening here. Now let's look at the full painting. This is in fact a very important, probably one of the most important funerals that happened in the Ramayana story and depicted by the artist. This is the funeral of Dasharath himself. Now let's look at this painting for a moment. It's a beautiful and very charged composition. It starts somewhere in the receding background, and then it's flaring. It's literally opening up in the foreground. But let's try and see what was artist trying to say here. I mean, it's probably one of the saddest parts of the story where the beloved king has died and the entire city is grief stricken. And what artist probably is trying to say here that how loved King Dasharath was, that people here, I could count up to 200 faces, literally, the heads or the faces shown in this composition, that people literally doled out to attend the last rites or to say last goodbye to their beloved king. And in the extreme left in the composition, we see from the city now gradually coming out the arthi, or the janaza, as it looks like here, of King Dasharath. And I don't know how clear is the image, but right next to the arthi, there's a man who's spraying color, the spraying gulal on all the people, and all of them, they have a certain, they have the gulal somewhere sprayed on their heads. And this is, I think, one of the rituals still followed in some traditions in some parts of India, where the gulal is sprayed on all the participants of the funeral, wherein it colors the mind of people in one particular state of emotion here, which is sorrow, that all of them are sorrowful and grief stricken. Now, again, focusing on this funeral, which is happening way in the background. That is not what the focus of the artist is, to show the funeral fire, but he wanted to show the love and adoration of the people. But this is a version of one Pahari artist who painted it. What if it was painted by some other artist? It could have been imagined probably 100 ways by 100 artists. But let's look at just one more example, which was painted during Akbar's court in an imperial atelier. And this is another beautiful and very charged composition where we see the Dasharath's funeral fire, where the fire takes the central stage. It almost occupies, unlike the last composition, where there's a teeny tiny funeral fire in the background. Here, the fire takes almost 1/4 of the composition. And let's again look at some of the close-ups of this. In the center is where we see the funeral fire, and we can literally see a man's body being burning, which I think is amazing, because how to get that detail within a fire, it's an incredible job by an artist. And on the extreme right, we see the two young, again, very young prince who were left behind, who could not go into the exile with their brothers Ram and Lakshmana. The two other brothers, Bharat and Shatrughan, are inconsolable in grief. One of them is literally fainting, the other one is tearing his clothes apart. And we see all the faces with deep sorrow. We can feel in this particular painting, when we look at the original painting, we can literally feel the angst, the anger, the sorrow peeping through the two-dimensional composition. It was in fact one of the saddest episodes, not just, I mean, which can still haunt us after so many years whenever we listen to the particular episode of the story. But that's enough of the sad versions in the Ramayana. Let's look, because Ramayana offers that, like I said, it offers us a range of emotions. From sorrow, let's go and see some of the happy accidents, some of the happy episodes which happened in Ramayana, especially in the paintings. This particular painting is probably, again, one of the most happy episodes which happened, is the welcoming of the brides, of all the four brides of the four young princes. And it's such a beautiful version, probably based on the regional rites. I can say the regional rituals where they, and in this particular composition, such a beautiful setup of the composition that in the foreground, there is a doorway, and we can see only half the face of the man. So that is obviously not important, but the presence was important to say that this is where the boundary is, and inside whatever happens, it's probably not allowed for the commoners. And inside, on all the wall sides, we see different chambers, and they are receiving the newly married bride and groom after having performed their aarti. So aarti is being performed right here in 4 different sections. But this is a happy event. So how do we, besides the knowing of the story that we know, yes, it is a happy event, that happy event is usually associated with performances and music. And in the center, almost in the foreground, we see the musicians performing. Speaking of the same episodes, let's look another painting which was painted probably 100 years before this painting was painted, which is even more invigorating, even more charged up in many ways. This is again the same episode where the brides are being taken in the house and they're being welcomed. And here, if we see, the artist's approach was more methodical. It's more arranged in a way that if we see at the top right, it's the crowd and the busting and the people's attendance and the wedding procession, whatever was left behind. And we'll again see people coming out in numbers. We see hundreds of faces out there. And one can actually imagine like the loud music, the loud tumultuation and the crowd of the people. You can see the hundreds of drums there and trumpets and whatnot. But inside, what is happening is we see some sort of fire. So the source of the light in this night scene is the torches and the candles, and we see quite a lot of them. And in probably a set in a motion, we see that Bharata and his wife in the center, in the top center of the composition, they are being taken inside. And what is most beautiful in this particular part is that we see the Gathmandan Jod, that is the green lace, which is tying from the sari of Urmila and going to Lakshmana's shoulder. And that is probably repeated on all of them. And what is most interesting in this particular composition is that the brides are all veiled, they are all in gungat. But at the same time, we can still feel that, they are being humbled, they are being shy. Obviously they have this coyness of new brides. So their heads are a little low. We can feel it even from their veiled appearances. And in the center, where Rama and Sita are being welcomed by one of the mothers when the aarti is happening, we see Ram and Sita. I don't know how clear is the image, but can you see them on a rangoli, which was probably made earlier by the women in the Zanana to welcome this particular episode. And let's move on to yet another episode and yet another painting style, which was painted in 1600s in central India, is probably one of the courts of Orcha. And this is the episode now much later, after the wedding sequence, when Ram and Sita were summoned to go to exile. Not Sita. Sita chose to go with Rama, and so was Lakshmana. So we see all of them, all three of them, dropped off by their minister called Sumant. Sumant. And Sumant is what's happening in this composition. Now let's try to read this composition. Here in the center is a tree, which probably has no relevance with the happenings of the episode, but it still takes a central stage. It is an artist's device to divide the composition. So in the left of the composition, where Sumant is going away in the chariot, we see the background color is different. It is blue. Blue is color of the of peace and quiet, and a lull and a dull, which is now going to prevail in this part of the region where Ram and Sita are not going to be seen for the next 14 years. So there's going to be a quiet. And what awaits on the other side, on the right side of the composition, are the adventures, are the fights and the battles and so much that the background is literally charged with red, because red is the color usually associated with Veer Ras and with the Ras of Shringar. And because Rama and Sita are together, it is again a Shringar. It's a form of Shringar, and that the love is still there. And in the bottom of the composition, we see Kevat ready to take them to the new journey of their lives that they have embarked upon. But what is most important in this composition is the presence of these two giant birds in the corner. And these two birds, well, we may not know who exactly they are, but we can only assume that, some of the art historians have argued that these are the two birds who signify the pairing of Rama and Sita, that even in this adventure where Sita chose to go with Rama and not be separated. So the inseparability of Rama and Sita is probably signified by the presence of the birds here. Now, what's most interesting in this composition is the river, which is just a band of gray, and down there in the foreground, which unless we really try to see, we can't see. But when they started the journey, and when the same composition is handled by a Pahadi artist, almost 120 years after this composition, let's see what he achieved here. Isn't it stunning? It's a beautiful composition where I think almost 90% of the composition is just taken over by the water. And we see the river Ganga flowing in its full magnificence, with its full power. And we can literally feel the waves of the river here. And what we see here, if we again try to zoom the composition a little bit, in the center is this teeny tiny barge where we see Rama and Sita and Lakshmana. Lakshmana's his head down. He is not unsure of what's happening, but he chose to follow his brother. Sita is facing Ram, but Ram looks determined. His full face is shown. But probably based on some regional version, here we still see Samant with the chariot in the barge, which is surprising. But again, in this teeny tiny detail in the painting, what is most interesting is the boatsmen. If you see that how they are struggling with these giant waves in the river, giant course of the river, it's stunning to see the physical manifestations. Let's look at this painting once again and see the enormity of water which is shown here. And speaking of the water from here, let's see another painting which shows even more magnitude of the water. In this last painting, what we see is the flowing river, that it is flowing in a certain direction, and the water is not taking you round and round, but it is taking you maybe from one direction to the other direction. And what boatsmen are doing is that fighting the currents and going in the opposite direction of it, not in the opposite, but in a tangent of it. But what we see in this particular painting is not the river, it's the ocean. It's the ocean that now Hanuman and his monkey followers will have to cross. This is the first time nobody has crossed the ocean before this, at least from the monkey army. And this is an episode where everybody is unsure of what is going to happen and how things are going to take a shape in the future. This is the first time when Hanuman was encountered with this enormity of water. So what artists wanted to focus here was the enormity again of the water and the uncertainty of water. So waves are not in one particular direction, but we see whirlpools, and whirlpools of not just simple lines, but the lines are also quivering. We see shaking lines, we see quiver in them. And what is also most, let's try and look at this particular painting in the detail. Now, this is the episode where Hanuman somehow with Jamwant and some of his monkey army, he goes to the bank of to the southernmost bank, and there he encounters this giant bird called Sampati, who was the brother of Jatayu, who could not fly because of certain reasons. I'm not going into the details of the stories here, but who had a perfect vision better than anybody probably at that particular point in time. So after listening to his brother's name Jatayu and the name of Sri Ram, he decides to help them, and with his far vision, he could see Sita Mata somewhere in the Lanka, and he tells the Hanuman and other people about it, and miraculously his flight is back, and that is when he takes the flight after ages, and goes away probably to his brother Jatayu, who he was dearly missing. But in this composition, what's really, again, what is interesting is that first is the details. If we look at it, is that because of the vision of the bird, here if we see the eye of the bird, which probably artists paid most attention to, it's a fiery eye, it's a beautiful eye, and we can see the power of it, we can feel the power of it the way artist has delineated it. And on the other side, we see Hanumana and Jamwant and other monkeys pointing at the direction, but still not sure of what to do and how to cross it. But there are certain details in this painting which are so beautiful, that in the water we see some mythical creatures, we see some creatures as to show the presence of a world underneath, but what it is nobody knows. So that's a sign where artists put the uncertainty in the water, that there may be mysteries nobody knows of, what can happen nobody as yet knows of. Moving from this painting, and here I just wanted to show the enormity of the water, that almost 3/4 of the painting is just covered in the quivering lines. And within the lines, we see some colors also. And those are because of the beautiful sunset, that there is a golden behind these mountains, which is gradually cascading into the shades of orange and blue, which are then reflected on the water. And that's why we see these colors reflected onto the water, which I think is amazing. Talking of the battles in the painting, let's look at just one painting which highlights which highlights a battle scene, which was painted in Kota in Rajasthan in 1700s and early 1700s. This particular painting is probably one of my most favorite battle scenes from Ramayana. So we all know that Ramayana, the battle between Rama and Ravan, it was done in stages. It was a day-long battle. It happened in many episodes, like one after the other. There was something leading up to the final battle where the Ram and Ravan on their chariots encountered each other. So this is what is happening. This is a final battle between Rama and Ravan, and it shows the full force of what had happened on the battlefield. Again, it is the imagination and conception of one artist. But let's see what artists tried to achieve here. On the top half of the composition, we see the background, which is vermilion. It's filled with arrows, and I could literally count up to more than 100 of the arrows in the background. So that is how the artist showed the motion in the painting, that it is just filled with one after the other, attack. We can sound attack literally in this painting if we look at it closely. And in the lower half of the composition is the pure, proper drama unfolding between the monkey army and the demon army. Let's look at some of the detailed snapshots from this painting. In the center is probably, again, see these two monkeys who are ready to leap, and the way their tails furling in the air, and the way they are showing their teeth, and the way their hands moving and the legs moving, and they're just about to leap and jump onto a demon. I think this is incredible, the way the artist showed the motion in the painting. And in other images also, where to each demon there were at least three to four monkeys and bears literally taking down the demons, attacking them with their nails, with their teeth, with whatever they could, because they did not have, all of them did not have the weapons. Who had the weapons, they used weapons, but who did not, they used their manual power. And which the way the artist made it is stunning. And in the top left is we see that Lakshman is being taken onto the battlefield on Hanuman's shoulders, because of the previous episode where Lakshman had encountered an injury and he was not fit enough to be on himself. So that's why this is a tiny detail which the artist made sure to capture in the composition. Let's go back to the painting and ponder upon one interesting detail in the painting, that, like I said just few minutes before, that the chosen color for the Veer Ras is red, but somehow here the background is vermilion. It's not pure red. And I was wondering as to why artist chose vermilion and not red. It's appealing. It gives us the Veer Rasa. But at the same time, what I assume, that he did not choose the color red so that he could contrast the red of the blood splatter on the vermilion, which gives even more drama, which adds more drama to the composition. So from this battlefield, now let's look at one painting which depicts Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita, but it is not a painting of a Ramayana. It does not depict any of the episodes from Ramayana, but the story of Rama, that is the Rāmāyaṇa, that is the journey of Ramayana, has embedded so beautifully in our heads that we have developed this amazing capacity to see Ram everywhere. In the painting tradition in India and in the classical Indian musical tradition in India, we have this tradition called Ragamala, where the ragas and the raginis, that is the male and female counterparts of the sung musical melodies, are arranged in a sequence. And sometimes we see the combined ragas, the Joda raga, not exactly the Joda raga, but the combined ragas as the raga putras of certain ragas. And one of the main ragas is Deepak Rag, and one of the sons of Deepak Rag is said to be the Ram Rag. And I was quite surprised to encounter this painting, that drama has become so popular that even when it comes to singing tradition, classical traditions of India, that we were still thinking of Ram and Sita, somewhere we still keeping. In fact, in Ramayana, I don't think we ever came across any encounter or any episode that when they were in exile, they made music or they performed. But at the same time, taking that episode from their exile, if a raga, the gravitas of the ragas can be thought over, that how did they cross those 14 years? How did they live in those 14 years? And whatever they went through, the gravitas of all of that, if a raga can capture it, and if we can listen to the raga and think of all of these encounters, then the raga was named as the Ram Raga. And this painting was painted in the Deccan area in 1688. And talking of the fires, like I said, this entire epic offers so many fire sequences to it. In fact, at one particular point in time, I in fact thought of changing my topic and making a presentation on just flames in Ramayana, but maybe I save it for some another platform. But on this platform, but on this note, where it was said that Lanka sigri jal gayi, Hanuman ki poonch mein lagan na pai aag, that the fire that burned the entire Lanka but could not burn the tail of Hanuman. And of the fire, speaking of the fire, speaking of the fire which kept Ram determined, the fire which kept Sita persistent, and probably Lakshman patient throughout these years. On that note, I say thanks to all of you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, madam, for your insightful sessions. एक शब्द आता है बोलती दीवारें, ऐसे ही आपका एक बहुत बढ़िया कंसेप्ट था जिसको आपने चित्र आयन के थ्रू समझाया, और ये सारी पेंटिंग्स वो जो है अपने आप में गहरी बातें कर रही थी जो रामायण काल की हैं. मैं विद द रिस्पेक्ट ऑफ द चेयरपर्सन, क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशंस यदि आपके आगे आओ तो बाद में करें या अभी करें?
क्या मैं रिक्वेस्ट कर सकती हूँ अभी करें सर? मेरा ज़्यूरिख का टाइमिंग थोड़ा सा क्लैश हो रहा है and I might have to leave in next 15 minutes. I'm extremely sorry for it.
Yes, yes. जी.
Yeah.
So क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशंस के लिए ऑनलाइन पार्टिसिपेंट से रिक्वेस्ट है, यदि आपके क्वेश्चंस हैं तो चैट बॉक्स में लिख दें. ऑफलाइन पार्टिसिपेंट्स जो क्वेश्चंस करना चाहते हैं, रेज योर हैंड.
Hello, madam.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Please go on.
I have question.
Yeah.
मेरे पास एक क्वेश्चन है आपके लिए कि आप जो अभी काम कर रहे हैं सुमैया विद्या विहार, जो भी मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स हैं, जो भी चित्रावली आपको मिली है, सबसे ओल्डेस्ट कौन सी चित्रावली है जिसमें कुछ डेट मेंशन हो?
ये तो अभी रिसर्च सर अभी भी जारी है. इसमें रामायण के पेंटेड वर्जन सबसे पुराने कौन से हैं, ये अभी भी रिसर्च ऑन है. इनफैक्ट हमें ऐसा लगता है कि स्कल्पचरल ट्रेडिशन तो ऑब्वियसली पेंटिंग ट्रेडिशन से पुराना था ही था, और उसके बाद ऐसा अभी तक हम लोग सिर्फ अस्यूम कर रहे हैं कि कपड़ों के ऊपर पेंटिंग पहले हुई होगी पेपर पेंटिंग से, और ये पहले मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट्स बनती थी जो मैंने बताई उस तरह की पेपर पेंटिंग से पहले. सो आई एम एक्सट्रीमली सॉरी कि मैं आपको प्रिसाइज डेट नहीं दे पाऊंगी एट दिस मोमेंट.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the many paintings were so beautiful, and we got the insight how to look at them and to read them. Interestingly, the painting in which they were about to cross the river, there were two birds, and you mentioned about their symbolic presence to express the strength of being together of both Ram and Sita. So that also reminds me about the origin of Ramayana, which is mentioned as the couple of Prauncha birds, and suggestive of their separation, which is going to be in future. Is that something which can be also the possibility?
See, the thing is, I thought about it, not that I did not, I actually thought about it. But what happens in the beginning of the paintings is that there is a hunter who shoots the male of the couple, right? But if the male is already being killed, then how do we see these two birds now in a later, much later episode? So that is why I ruled out the possibility that it could be the presence of those two. But if they are present in the spirit, there is a possibility.
Okay.
It could be the two brothers, Jatayu and Sampati as well.
Hi, this is Anil. Ms. Sonika, looking at the paintings, I couldn't see the names of the painters. So were these individual, were there groups of people who did this?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Very interesting question, in fact, and with a very long answer, but I'm going to try to precise it. In India, unfortunately, we do not know the names of many of the painters. And the paintings which I showed them, and if you looked at the captions, so it's the dating of the painting which takes us closer to the workshop practices that was done in India. So we know some of the names. So majority of the paintings that I chose today from Pahadi region were made by the first and second generation of the artists Nensuk and Manuku, who were the two brothers. Now we know the names of these two brothers. We do know the names of their sons, but we still do not know the specific style as to which artist or which son painted what in a painting. So we can broadly say that the Pahadi paintings were painted by the first and second generation after Nensuk and Manuku, which were two famous artists in the courts in Guler and Kangra in Himachal Pradesh. But rest of them, for especially for the Kota artist and the artist from Orcha, they look like the products of a workshop, wherein workshop meaning that there would be a painting workshop, like a literal workshop, wherein it would be headed by a master painter. He would have assistants, and there would be apprentice in that particular setup. And this was the practice which was carried out probably in almost all the kingdoms in India, wherever there were painting ateliers. And there have been no system of systematically categorizing or recording the names of the artists, unfortunately. So we get very few names. And this is one of the researches which we are still carrying on. And hopefully we should get some names very soon. But as of now, we do not know many names of these artists.
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah.
उषा किरण आपसे प्रश्न पूछती हूँ मैं आपने
उषा जी आपसे माफी चाहती हूँ आपका प्रेजेंटेशन इतना अच्छा था कि मैं सोचती रही उसके बारे में बहुत देर तक
मैम आपने कहा कि हनुमान जी ने आग लगाई लंका में ऐसा बोला ना
जी ऐसा मैंने नहीं बोला ऐसा वाल्मीकि जी ने बोला था
वाल्मीकि जी ने बोला लेकिन आपने उल्लेख किया इसलिए बोलती हूँ कि उसकी पूंछ इतनी लंबी थी क्या अकेले की हनुमान जी की पूंछ इतनी लंबी थी और आग लगाने में कितने दिन लगे फिर उनको
देखिए तो किंवदंतियां हैं देखिए मैं मेटाफोरिकली इस चीज पे बिलीव करना चाहूंगी क्योंकि हम ये स्टोरी सुन के बड़े हुए हैं और वो हमारी इमेजिनेशन में इतनी डीपली फीड हो चुकी है कि हम लोग वो ऐसा इमेजिन करते हैं अब वो सब था नहीं था हमने देखा नहीं देखा देखिए मैं आपके वर्जन पे 100% बिलीव करना चाहूंगी कि ऐसा नहीं था क्योंकि ये फिजिकली पॉसिबल नहीं है बट एट द सेम टाइम जैसा कि हमारे फेमस गजल बोलते हैं वो गजल गायक बोलते हैं कि दिल बहलाने को ख्याल ही काफी है तो हमारे दिल के लिए ख्याल ही काफी है कि हाँ शायद ऐसा हुआ होगा
फिर भी हम बोलते हैं ना कि हनुमान जी ने लोग भी जले हो गए ना लंका जल गई
जी बिल्कुल जले होंगे ये तो वन साइडेड नहीं हो सकता अगर बर्न हुआ है तो दोनों तरफ बर्न हुआ है दुख हुआ है तो दोनों तरफ हुआ है खुशी हुई है तो दोनों तरफ हुई है इट इज ऑलवेज रेसिप्रोकल यस
may I add to this
yes please
जैसे लाइक हनुमान चालीसा में भी शायद सुना होगा सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सिंह दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंक जरावा यानी हनुमान जी जो थे वो काफी बड़ा अवतार भी ले सकते थे तो वो आप छोटे ह्यूमन फॉर्म में देख रहे हैं कि लंका जलाया होगा तो वो बड़ा ह्यूज फॉर्म लेके उन्होंने जलाया और दूसरी बात जब पूछते लंका जलाया तो मेनली काफी जगह देखा पड़ा उन्होंने लंका नहीं जलाया जो स्ट्रेटेजिक एसेट्स थे उनके जैसे जहाँ वॉरफेयर का सामान रखा जाता है या नवग्रहों को आजाद किया जो उनके स्ट्रेटेजिक पोर्ट्स थे जो डिफेंस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से उनकी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज थी उनने उन चीजों को यूजुअली कोई रेसिडेंशियल बिल्डिंग या इस टाइप लोगों को नहीं जलाया मेन चीज उनका जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर था मेन उसको करा था एंड थैंक यू फॉर योर प्रेजेंटेशन इट वाज वेरी लवली
thank you very much thank you I think that should be all or are there more questions
जलाया लंका को नहीं जलाया मैडम लेकिन अपन ऐसे सुनते आए ना छोड़ दीजिए ना कथा है अरे ऐसा कैसे छोड़ेंगे
ऐसा मैडम ये तो ब्यूटी है रामायण की कि ये ओपन फॉर इंटरप्रिटेशन है कि जितने मुंह उतनी स्टोरीज बन सकती हैं जितने टेकर्स हैं उतना इंटरप्रिटेशन बन सकता है
There are few online questions. Please wait for a minute.
Sure.
Mr. Sunil Kumar is asking what is common between Indian pictorial tradition and Southeast Asia?
Well, India is also part of the Southeast Asia, but if he's talking about the other countries in subcontinent, then some of the episodes are common. Some obviously takes on the regional variations, and there are some episodes which we do not get to see in the usual depictions which were painted in India. In fact, in India also, there are so many versions that we get to see different episodes, at least one different painting in each series that was painted across, if that answers the question.
Okay. There is one more questions from, I think, from the same person. Some
Yeah.
paintings of Dasharatha Jataka on different stupas. Have you come across that, ma'am?
Not as yet. My research is still very precise on Ramayana. I see it's really strange because I mostly work on Ragamala paintings, and Ramayana is one of my interests. So I still haven't dig deeper into Ramayana as yet, but yeah, hopefully very soon, inshallah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Let's have last question.
Sure,
ये
sure.
last question,
Sure.
madam.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
The paintings that you had shown was excellent. Just out of curiosity, this is a curious question that I would like to know, since we know Ramayana changes from every region, there are regional changes. From the Pahari region to, if we go to the south, they have a different story. Okay, so have you seen the same trends going on in every paintings that you have collected, and you would like to share any interesting one that it's not in your belief, but you have seen it and you have liked it?
See, I particularly like the paintings which shows the water. Like I collected, I try to collate as many paintings which shows the flow of the water in the paintings. And that's why I showed you 3 different versions today of how the water is being handled by the artist. And it's really interesting because these natural forces which the artist, because natural forces are something, where artists can literally unfurl themselves to depict them. So other than the episodes within the Ramayana, the paintings which show the natural forces, for example, the forest, for example, the water, for example, fire, is where my main interest lies. And because of the commonality of this, especially the water sequence, I have been collecting the paintings from the Govt episode and from the last episode before the battle starts. So these 2 paintings, yes, there are commonalities. There are paintings where you would see Ram and Sita on a barge with Govt, which is a repeat, which you will see across the board. And then there are episodes from where Hanuman tries to jump and cross the ocean. So that is again a common that you will see across the board. You will see in all the Ramayana painting series. But how they show is what are the differences of the leap or the jump of the Hanuman from one place to other, and how he crosses that ocean. That imagination of the artist is really extraordinary. And I hope probably at a different platform, I get to share all of those paintings with you. So on that hopeful note, I say thank you and goodbye to all of you. Enjoy your day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.